So before going to Futarchy, we have to first study prediction markets. How do they work? How do we structure them? So very simple prediction market that we had for the US election. We ask who will win the US election, and we can tokenize both outcomes. So you have some Trump token, you have some Harris token, and if Trump wins, the Trump token will pay out. If Harris wins, the Harris token will pay out. And if you look at the price of the Trump token, you can deduce an implied probability of Trump winning. So that gives you probabilistic predictions. But we can do even better than just looking at what will happen. We can look at what will happen conditionally on something else. So here, for example, we had a market on the Bitcoin price if Trump wins, or the Bitcoin price if Harris wins. And we could see that the market was giving a higher price with Trump winning than Harris. And when Trump won, we also saw this materializing in the markets. So let's go on the structure of a prediction market. Basically, you have a market, which is questions. So you put some underlying token, for example, DAI. And now you're going to get a complete set of all the potential outcomes. So here, which party will win? You get one token for the Democratic Party, one Republican token, and one other tokens. People can trade those, like order books, AMM, OTC, like any way you want. And you can see this link between the token price and the probability of the event happening. If we don't just want to trade outcomes of like singular outcomes, we can trade values. So let's say we want to predict what will be the inflation. So we create a scalar market. So we're going to ask what will be the inflation in 2026. We put a range, 0 to 10. And if the inflation is lower than the range, you will have the down token which will redeem. If it's higher than the range, you will have the up token which will redeem. And if it's within the range, which it should be if your range was good, they will both redeem proportionally. So here, if you have like 8% inflation, the up will redeem for 0.8. So if you get the price of the up token and you assume that the value will be within the range, you can get an estimate of the value. So here, up token is at 0.8. So the expected value of inflation would be 8% with this market. So now contingent markets. So you still have your first market. Here, you put some DAI. You get a complete set of the potential candidate of the Democratic Party, Biden, Harris, someone else. But now, with the Biden token, you can put it into the second market, which will ask which party will win the election. And now you have a token, which is a Biden Democrat token, which redeems if the Democratic Party wins and Biden is the candidate. So if you look at the price of this token in comparison of the Biden token, you get an implied probability of Biden winning if he is a candidate. Okay, so now you have all the basic tools, and let's see how we can put all of that together to make better decisions and to make some Futarchy. So first, like short history of governance system. Basically, you have two issues in governance system. One is a bias, which is the system targeting something other than the common good. And then you have the variance. Basically, is the system good at hitting what it's targeting? So autocracy, like, regal monarchies, dictatorships, they tend to be the worst for both bias and variance because they have high bias. They target what the autocrats want. And they have high variance because autocrats, they are alone. They cannot know all the topics, so they're not going to be very good at hitting what they target. So you have the worst possible. Then you can get into an oligarchy. So in this case, you will have some elite class, which is going to make the decisions. And here, you still don't have a good bias because you are targeting what's good for the elite class. But you more or less solve the variance problem because you have multiple decision makers. They can talk with each other. They can find who is the best at this particular topic. And in this case, you would have a lower variance. Now, if you get into a democracy, which will be a direct voting democracy, well, you will have, in this case, no bias because people will want what is good for them. And most of the time, the combination of what people want for themselves will lead to something pretty close to the common good. But then you still have a high variance because obviously Not everyone can be knowledgeable on each topic. Not everyone can spend a lot of time studying each question, each proposal. So you will have a high variance because you're not going to be very good at eating what you target. So the question is, can we create some new governance system which can solve this and get both a low bias and a low variance? So one thing you can notice is that often in the political debate, people tend to agree on what they want. Like you ask, what do you want? They say wealth, health, and happiness. So people tend to agree. But then when you ask them, how can we get that? That's where people disagree. Like less taxes, higher taxes, sacrifice a goat. You have each debate in general on how to get what we want, while what we want tend to be more or less consensual. So yeah, so can Futarchy solve that? And can we both get a low variance and a low bias? So the idea is to split the decision process into two phases. The first one is vote and value. So we vote on what we want. What do we want to optimize? Do we want to optimize for the wealth of the country? Do we want to optimize for the wealth per capita? Do we want to optimize for some other metric like healthcare metrics, HDIs? And then we're going to make market where we're going to ask, if we pass this proposal, what will be the value of this metric? And we pass a proposal which will lead to the best metrics. So let's assume that you are a single topic voter. You are only interested by the Bitcoin price. You don't care about anything else. You are in the last US election. You look at those markets and you say, yeah, I just want to increase the price of my Bitcoin. In this case, you can vote for Trump because Trump will be the one which will lead to the highest expected value of your Bitcoin portfolio. Obviously, in practice, people tend to have a wider range of stuff they care about. So how can we structure those markets? So let's say we go back to the election. Let's say we are the Democratic Party, and here what we want to win the elections. We have a list of candidates, so Biden, Harris, some others. We have the first market, which candidate will be the Democratic candidate. We get the Harris token, the Biden token, some other token, and now we put those into the second market, which asks which party will win the election. And so now we have a token which is a Biden Democrat. So Biden is the candidate and the Democratic Party wins. We have a Harris Democrat. Harris is a candidate and the Democratic Party wins. And when we look at the price of the Biden Democrat in respect to Biden, we get that it's 0.30. So you will have 30% chance of winning if you put Biden as your candidate. And you can do the same thing with Harris. In this case, you have 40%, so it tends to be better, so you can switch your candidate to Harris. You still lose, but you had more chances of winning putting Harris than keeping Biden. But in practice, most of the time, we want to optimize on metrics, not just outcome. Well, remember the scalar markets, so we can combine that with scalar markets. For example, we could have a metric Futarchy. We could ask, which project will bring the highest amount of users if we fund them? So those can be communication project, and we want to optimize the amount of user in our platform. So you have all those communication projects which come. They ask, hey, can you give us some money? And we're gonna do some communication for you. So you put your DAI, you get token of each project, and now on each project, you ask if we fund this project to communicate on our project, what would be the amount of user that we will have like in 6 months. So people can trade, they can trade up token, they can trade down token. When you look at the range and the price of the up token, you can see the implied number of users that you will get. So you see that the project B is the best one. So you give the funding to project B. And at the end, in the next 6 months, you can look at the amount of user you have and you can resolve those markets. So note that as a trader, you can use the same fund to trade on all of those markets at once, because only one market will be relevant, like project A, C, and D, because they are not chosen, they are not funded. All the trade which happen there, they have no practical effect because they all redeem for like token which do not redeem for DAI. Only the B token redeem for DAI. So only the trade between B up and B down will matter in the term of profit and loss of the trader. So we can go back on what to optimize. So already talked a bit in the case of state, like GDP, HGIs. But now if you look at crypto, we have 3 main metrics that crypto project like. So you have obviously the amount of users, which sometimes may be a bit hard to get, but you could always run some studies to find how many people are actually using your product, because you want to try to avoid to do double count users which are using multiple addresses. TVL, that's still a pretty nice metric, even if one of the previous speakers was proposing a metric harder to bias. And the fees which your project is getting, so it really depends on the project. If you are a lending platform, it can be lending fees. If you are L1 or L2, it can be the fee given to the sequencer or the fee burn in the case of ETH. But we can also sometimes want to optimize on things which may be subjective. So there is all this work which is being done currently on impact evaluation. So here you don't really have an objective metric to resolve to, but you will use a committee, you will use different sort of mechanism to evaluate the impact of the project after the fact. So it's still subjective, but it tends to be way easier to have a consensus on that, because it tends to be easier for people to agree on the value provided by a project compared to the potential value that this project could provide in the future. So we know some projects are using RetroPGF, like Optimism. So you can just use that. You can just use the RetroPGF as your impact metric, or you can develop your own impact metric. And in this case, you ask if this project is funded, what will be the value of the impact metric, and you find the project which will have the highest impact. Another way of doing Futarchy is what I would call price-based Futarchy. So here we have 2 tokens. So you have one token which is relative to the project that you want to make decision for. So in this case, you have the GNO token if you have to make Gnosis. We have a token that we will call the reference asset. Here it's DAI, which is more or less $1. And now what we can ask people, we can ask them to trade in the child universe of the proposal passing or not passing. So how do we do that? So you can come with GNO, you put it into the market, and now you get yes GNO and no GNO. So the yes GNO redeems for GNO if the proposal passes. The no GNO redeems for GNO if the proposal does not pass. You can do the same thing with DAI. You get yes DAI and no DAI. And now what you do, you can trade yes GNO for yes DAI, no GNO for no DAI. So basically, you can do some buy and sell of GNO and DAI conditionally on the proposal passing or conditionally on the proposal not passing. Keep in mind that you are not exposed in any way on the likelihood of the proposal passing or not. You can be completely neutral on whether the proposal will pass. You are not betting on a proposal passing. You are just doing conditional trade on the proposal passing or not passing. And now you can look at the price of the yes GNO compared to the yes DAI, and that's going to give you a conditional price. So you can see here that if the proposal pass, you have a conditional GNO price of 122 DAI. If it doesn't, it's 131. So here you could conclude that if this proposal passing will be bad for the price, and in this case, well, not pass it. So here I'm putting that in the context of crypto, with crypto tokens, but you could do something similar with stock for publicly traded companies. So how we can see how it looks like on an interface. So that's done by Futarchy.fi. You can see this graph, so people are doing some trade. So you can see like the if yes, you can trade. If no, you can also trade. And that gives you those 2 conditional price. In general, you tend to have one higher than the other, and you tend to have the spot price in the middle. And toward the end, you also tend to have the spot price, which tend to reach the price of the decision, which will lead to the highest price if people assume that the decision makers are going to follow the market. So that's how it looks like in practice. So now how do we use that? So we can really go from anything, like it can be simple advisory to some fully autonomous system. You can really go full, like we have this project which is on Solana, which is MetaDAO. So it's a DAO which works only on Futarchy. So you have some tokens. It's trying to optimize the price of its own token, but there is no vote. Like you have no delegate, you have no one voting on anything. Anytime you want to make a proposal, you make a proposal, and people can trade this MetaDAO token conditionally on the proposal passing or not passing. Here you can see that the price, if approved, is better than the price if rejected. So the proposal ended up being approved and executed. So that's very interesting. for me, it's also a bit scary because that's the first time I see something on Solana which is more advanced than Ethereum, but it's very interesting. So advisory, so that has been tried actually even in 2020 by Gnosis, where they had done this impact module. So this is basically just a module you put on Snapshot, and you can see the impact on the price of the token of your proposal. So it can just be used as advisory. So when you are voting, you can take that into account. Maybe you may still want to vote the proposal even if it decreases the price, because maybe you want to do it for ideological reason, or you think the market is wrong. So you can still vote whatever you want, but you get some market feedback before voting. What you can also do, you can also delegate to Futarchy. So you can have like a Futarchy address, which is already going to vote the way of Futarchy, and you could say, hey, I'm going to put like, I don't know, like 10 or 25% of my tokens that I'm going to delegate to this non-human delegate, which is just following Futarchy advice. Then we have specific application of Futarchy. So you have this idea of the Futarchy optimizer. Maybe you don't want to put your whole DAO into Futarchy, but you can take some of the asset of your DAO. It can be the DAO token, it can be like ETH or stables that you put into a Futarchy optimizer. So this is a sub-DAO. You give it a target metric. It can be increasing the proposal of your DAO, it can be increasing the number of users, the TVL, whatever you want. You give it asset. And now, like anyone can come up with some proposal, you will have some Futarchy period where people can trade. And then it's going to execute the proposal if it will lead to a higher value of the metric or the asset you want to optimize for. Obviously, when you have a proposal passing, you may say, oh yeah, well, it's already going to be good. You know, like if I want to increase the TVL, obviously spending the money is going to increase the TVL, but you have to keep in mind that if you are spending the money in the optimizer, well, there will be less money for the future proposal. So market participants should take into account the value created by the proposal, but also the value destroyed by the proposal, because that's less asset for the next proposal. And we could even argue that's even closer to a real DAO, because what we've been calling DAO will tend to be organizations which are still human-led, but here you don't have much human decision. You may have some human decision in the term of traders, but it's not directly a decision, it's more like a trade. And now, like if you get the AI agent, like now you could even have an organization which work with almost no human involvement at all. Then we can have specific application. So for example, here with Kleros, we're gonna run this where we want to have some project to be creating TVS, total value secure for Kleros. And so the project can come, they apply, and now we have markets which ask, if we give an investment into this project, what will be the amount of TVS that this project will bring? People can trade, and in this case, we will give the investment to the project, to the Purple project, because the market estimates that it will give 5 million of TVL, which is significantly greater than the other projects. So yeah, so thanks for listening, and we're gonna go to the questions.
Thank you everyone. Do we have any questions? No questions on the board. Question over there.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Question, so I think I understood how it works more or less, but is it not very easy to manipulate the outcome if, right, we have these small tokens for single, very specific use cases that might have low liquidity, I guess, so it's very easy to manipulate the price of a yes or no outcome on Futarchy, on the Futarchy system?
So if you're trying to manipulate a price, you're basically acting de facto as a bad trader, because most traders, they try to optimize their profit, but here you are acting as a bad trader because you are trading, let's say you think that it's gonna get 5 million of TVS, but then you try to put it down and you're gonna trade it and sell it at, so that it will estimate 1 million of TVS. So you are not trading the value that you are currently estimating, but you are trading a value to try to buy as a market. So the thing is that if you do that, you are creating an opportunity for good traders to go counter trade you, like they can take the other side of the trade. And by doing it, you are acting as a de facto subsidy to the market. So like if you have a market and a lot of traders which are bad, which can be bad either because they have other intention or they can be stupid, like it doesn't really matter. Well, that just creates more opportunities for a good trader to come there, trade against them, and make some profit. So manipulator will actually make market more efficient because they just create a more positive sum game for the people who are trading and are not manipulators.
Okay, but if we use that Futarchy system to actually make the decisions, right? If I want to push for an approval to be passed, then I might buy the Futarchy vote saying yes, right? And that will kind of bias the vote towards. So it will bias the actual outcome of the proposal.
Yeah, but then anyone can go counter trade you. And if you actually try to do that at scale, that's even more attractive for people to go and counter trade you because they have a lot of money to be made by counter trading you. It's not a closed system. Like, well, there is a finite amount of DAI, sure, but in practice, even if you're a manipulator, you will only have a very small portion of the DAI supply. And good trader, if they see this kind of opportunity of things which are highly mispriced, they will just come there and counter trade you. And you could see that in not even Futarchy, just in a regular market. If you can look at the election market, as soon as you have something which is clearly mispriced, well, traders are going to come because they have some opportunities and they are putting back the price to more reasonable values.
Do you have any more questions? Gentleman at the back. Here we are, sir.
Thank you. Actually, I want to plus one the question that was just before me, because something in your presentation I didn't quite understand is at the beginning you sound something very generic, like we could do that for policies, asking what wellness is or how to best vote on a policy. But then your answer just now is like, it cannot be general, because if I start doing photocracy decision, then it's easy to skew the system, and you cannot really counterbid if it's like a general, we're always going to follow the market. And I had the same, so I have two questions. My first question is...
one question by one.
Yeah,
okay.
let's start with one question.
One question by one, you can ask another one after. So I think you may have misunderstood one point, which you are not trading on which decision will be made. You are trading on what will be the value of a metric if this decision is being made. So as a trader, you should not really be concerned about what the decision is going to be. You are only to be concerned about what will be the impact of the decision. And with the same money, you can trade in the universe of all decisions being made at the same time. You can say, okay, like if this is this project, that will be the TVS. If this is this project, that will be this TVS. And you can use the same capital to trade on all those universes at once. But at no point you need to have an exposure on what will the actual decision be.
I understand that. Would that mean that the actual decision needs to be decorrelated by the actual photocracy? Because if it's automatic decision based on what the market would think, then there's no decorrelation between what the decision would be and how I can influence the decision to be, which I think was the question before, right? Yes, and I also do not, I don't know how to match these 2 points. For me, they're contradictory. So,
well, first, imagine the decision is independent. Are you okay in this situation?
Yes.
So your concern is that if the decision depends on the market, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the decision can depend on the market, but the impact of the decision will not depend on the market. Well, at least not significantly. So there is obviously some sort of selection bias in that if the project C is the one chosen, it's chosen because it's the one which will lead to the highest TVS. So it's going to be more likely to lead to higher TVS because that means that the other traders will have thought that it will lead to the highest TVS. But this is something that trader can take into account. So they can take this bias into account when they are trading. And even this kind of bias tend to apply to all potential outcomes equally. So it's normally, most of the time, it shouldn't change the order. I know that you can construct very specific edge cases where it could change the order, but that's very specific edge cases, and it's very unlikely to happen in practice. But, or maybe your issue is that you could badly trade on decisions which are not going to be chosen. So you could also say, yeah, you can badly trade on decisions which are not going to be chosen, but then it doesn't do anything because those decisions are not chosen anyway. So trying to bias some market which are conditional on a decision which end up not being chosen has no impact on the system, so it doesn't cause an issue either. Oh, I think he had a second question.
Okay. Let's give someone else the opportunity to ask a question, or we have one question on the board as well. Unless, okay.
How accurate are prediction markets in your opinion? I would say in the vast majority, they are pretty accurate. There are indeed some edge cases which tend not to be well covered in the current implementation. For example, you can look at the Jesus market where it was trading that Jesus is going to come back at 2%. But if you look more deep into this market, you can understand why. So there are a few reasons to that. The first one is actually the market is not estimating the likelihood of Jesus coming back, but is estimating the likelihood of the oracle Yuma saying that Jesus come back, which is significantly more likely. It's way more likely that the oracle is wrong and broken than to actually Jesus coming back. So that's one part of the bias you will have, and that tend to be really showing in events which are very unlikely. And another part is also that current markets, so I'm talking about Polymarket, Calci, all of those, they are using dollar as the base asset. So even if you go and you see, oh, Jesus coming back is at 2%, I could just buy the no token of that and get 2%. Oh, yes, you can, but 2% in 6 months, that's basically 4% per year. You could basically just put your money into ESDA instead and get 5.5%. So you may have some issue with cost of capital, and this one can be solved via having good underlying, which is yield bearing. You have issue with the oracle, which can be solved by having good oracles. And yeah, hi, I'm Claros, making good oracles. So even if you have a low cost of capital, you may still have issues because traders may want to do more stuff with their money instead of trading on this market, which is very unbalanced. And we have ways to do that also. Like we have multi-categorical markets that we can use to be able to trade on the long tail of probabilities. You could also have combinatorial markets which can do that. So I would say in general, prediction markets are good. You may find some edge cases where not the correct structure was used and which could lead to some bias. But in general, I think most of the time you have a way to make a good and accurate prediction market.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions? One question.
Thank you. So stepping back a little bit about the trading topic of prediction markets, what is your opinion about actually using the accuracy of prediction markets in detecting basically biased votes or outcomes? The ones that were tampered with, or the ones that got, for example, in a voting system, for example, let's say that there was a vote that based on prediction markets should have come out at a specific range, but then the outcome was like drastically different.
Well, maybe you could use it as something to, like specifically watch this particular vote, but often you will have votes which may go against what the market may have looked at the most likely outcome. Just because the people who are trading may not really get much information. So for example, you had markets about the papal election, and you probably had a lot of people who were very knowledgeable about which one was likely to be elected as a pope, but those they would be the cardinals, which were first ethically probably prohibited to trade on those markets, and also even physically prohibited to trade on those markets because they were in the conclave. So in this case, you only had external traders which had very little information, and in this case, well, you could not have a good outcome. So prediction markets, they do not create information. Prediction markets, they aggregate information. And so if you have no information to aggregate in the first place, the market is probably not going to work. Or if the market is large enough, attractive enough, in this case, you can create incentive to create the information. So in the case of papal election, it's pretty hard. Maybe you could have, I don't know, like if it was a very, very big market, you may have some crazy guy trying to spy inside of the conclave. But more realistically, for example, in the US election, you had a French trader who ended up commissioning its own neighbor poll. So they were basically asking to people, who do you think your neighbor will vote for? Which is something that traditional pollster did not do, but because this guy had a lot of money that he wanted to trade on those market, for him it was worth it to pay people to make those polls because it could help him trade better. So yeah, most of the time you aggregate information, and if you make a very, very big market, you may even create incentive to create the information.